Today, on episode 209 of the Career Growth Made Easy podcast, we're talking about seasonal jobs versus job hopping, the differences and the similarities, as well as how to deal with them when it comes to resumes and interviews. Up next on Career Growth Made Easy, please join me. I was an engineer and in 2008 lost my job due to the economic collapse. Jobs were scarce. I didn't know where to turn to get help updating my resume. Online services and coaches charge hundreds, even thousands of dollars. I took matters into my own hands and learned how to craft interview-winning resumes. Shortly later, I landed a job with a Fortune 500 company. I've helped many achieve similar success. Now I share my tips to create interview-winning resumes, interviewing excellence, and high-performance growth strategies on my podcast, Career Growth Made Easy. Welcome back to the Career Growth Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Craig Ansell. We're talking about seasonal jobs versus job hopping today. It's episode 209. I mentioned in the intro, there are some similarities, but there's also some differences. I think as we're approaching the fall season, it's important to know the difference and how to handle them both. You never have any crystal ball. You might have a certain gut feeling. You might have a certain way you believe things are going to go, but you never really know how things will pan out. You can have the best plans, but they don't always come to fruition. So what you thought might have become a seasonal job for you might have actually been your first step on job hopping. So we have to be careful and understand where we're at in our lives. Especially as you're in entry-level position to your job, first couple of jobs or your career, you may be trying to find yourself. You know, the seasonal jobs aspect of it is kind of like, I would say, paid internships. When you're in high school, when you're in college, or even a job trade school, you might have the opportunity for internships. And that sometimes can be paid as well as unpaid. I know, unpaid. Are you kidding? Who would do that? Well, believe it or not, there's incredible value in unpaid internships as well as paid. And it's not so much about the money, as you probably can clearly see, although that may be a sticking point, a trigger point with you, almost a gut wrench. Of course I need to be paid for my time, Coach Craig. I get it. But in all reality, you're in the early steps of your career, on the early steps of your life. What it's all about in those days and those phases is getting experience, finding yourself. And so that's why internships are of incredible value. Here's a perfect example. I had the honor and the opportunity to speak at the University of Central Florida in the last, let's say, month or so. And there were undergrads in attendance as well as postgraduates. So there was close to about 100 people in the room. And we talked about the fact that there were some really smart, some postgraduate people in there, and that they had similar career tracks, similar educational tracks, more educational than career. And once they graduate, if they look across the room from each other, they are now each other's competition. And with that said, what's going to differentiate one from the other? Work experience. And although this episode isn't going to be focusing on internships, I do mention that seasonal jobs are somewhat like paid internships. Now, if an internship is unpaid in that example I mentioned, I know, why would I want to do that? It's about the experience. In this example I shared earlier, you have two people with experience, especially in the educational field, and they're going out looking for work now to start their careers. Well, the difference could simply be their experience in the marketplace. And that's why internships, paid or unpaid, are critical. Now, switching gears to seasonal jobs, same story. You might be thinking of a seasonal job as a placeholder. You might be thinking of it as just a filler to get, some of your time, take some of your time and use it up effectively, efficiently, maybe earn some extra cash on the side. You might need to save up for schooling depending on how you're doing it. Maybe you're saving up for some type of event, a vacation, something going on, a birthday party, some type of anniversary, or hey, maybe you're simply saying, I'm going to save up because I'm going to get an upgraded vehicle or my first vehicle, whatever the case is, right? You could have a number of reasons why. It could be just to pay your rent or to pay your lease. I get it. But the thing about seasonal jobs, much like I alluded to with the internships, believe it or not, you're gaining experience. It's more than, I think, just a placeholder in your life. It's more than just something to put on your resume. You're going to get experience working in possibly your career field, your job interest field, or not. The thing about it, you don't always know how you're going to feel when you're in this seasonal job. You could think of it as completely disconnected and unrelated to what you're interested in. For example, I'm an engineer. So if I took a seasonal job working in a retail store helping sell Halloween costumes, right, or something of that nature, you would never think that that would have something to do with engineering. But maybe working with their computer systems, their POS, their point of service stations, or I think it's called point of service or position of service stations, their POS units. Maybe I find something that is of interest to me. Maybe I get interested in networking or something else related to their technology, their servers. You never know. They could run into a problem and only I could solve it without them calling an external contractor because of my career interest and my educational interest in technology and engineering. So maybe it ends up being that this store is not just a one-of-a-kind store in Central Florida where I live, but maybe they're a chain and they create seasonal job opportunities all across the United States or maybe even all across the world globally. How could that be? Well, after the Halloween season is up, what comes next? Christmas. What comes next? Christmas. And then after that, there's all kinds of spring sales, clothing sales. There's all kinds of, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. There's all kinds of holidays. My point is there are companies and chains out there that do make a living, and a profitable one at that, at just focusing on seasonal jobs and looking at the anniversaries out there, looking at the special events coming up, the special holidays. So maybe that ends up being something that you weren't expecting. A seasonal job can turn possibly into a full-time job or a nearly full-time job for employment in your career field. So keep that in mind. As far as, getting you ramped up and getting you interested in seasonal jobs, I hope I did my part. Now, talking about resumes, do they belong, don't they belong, the seasonal job? I would say, as you're in the entry-level stages of your life, your job, your career, yes, they belong. They show that you worked, especially if you're going to any type of formal education or schooling, whether it's high school, college, trade school, anything like that. If you are working while being educated, that signals strongly that you are someone that is in control, has a plan, generally speaking, and that is looking to improve. So that goes a long way when it comes to earning opportunities for interviews, and those are great speaking points as well, working while receiving a formal education. It doesn't matter if that education is part-time, if it's weekends, or if it's online, virtual, that's not important. You don't have to go into those details on your resume. The fact that you're doing things in parallel shows that you're trying to sustain your life, grow, build your knowledge base, build your experience base, and that's what hiring companies are looking for. Now, switching gears to job hopping. Seasonal jobs are what they are. They're there for a period of time, typically a quarter. Like I said, Halloween, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, holidays, things like that, Christmas, winter, things of that nature. Then there's summer type clothing, right? You've got your sports equipment for the beaches, for the pools. You've got summer clothing, things of that nature. So they're there, and intentionally they're seasonal jobs. And you might want to note that on your resume. That way it's understandable that they're seasonal roles. Job hopping, on the other hand, I would say it's more like moving from job to job, and that would be to differentiate regardless of the season or regardless of the time period. And why would that possibly affect you? Well, or how could it impact you? I would say maybe you're trying to find yourself. Maybe like with internships I mentioned earlier, I went into a little bit of detail, you're trying to find where you fit in. So job hopping is kind of like internships, differently though that, these are likely paid jobs, but you're finding where you're compatible, where you're comfortable with, what you're interested in. So kind of think of it in the same way. Yes, jobs belong on your resume in most cases. However, if there are some roles that are completely off the beaten path, they completely don't align with what you're focusing on, you can choose to keep them on or to alleviate those from your resume, especially if it's getting lengthy. However, during the interview, have answers prepared. I wouldn't say canned, but have a general knowledge, a general experience of what you're going to talk about if you, in fact, look like you have job hopped. Now, If you've had jobs that you were at longer for a greater period of time, maybe a more stable position, that's something to explore. Expand on with yourself. Why, Craig, did you like this role here? Why were you here the longest compared to the others? Do these other jobs that you've had, were they short periods of time in the sense of weeks or months? Or do you have multiple jobs with multiple years of experience and then a few that are just a few month periods? Try to identify what that is so that you don't feel caught off guard. The old saying, deer in the headlights, right? Car comes around the corner, hits the deer, and the headlights hit the deer in the eyes. Oh, and they just freeze in the middle of the road. And so one of you has got to get out of the way or stop. Otherwise, there's going to be a pretty serious accident. You don't want to be caught like that during an interview. So what do you want to do? You want to research your history on your resume. You want to be prepared with some answers. Again, not canned answers. And then you also have the opportunity to take some of those extremely short period, if they were small stepping stone jobs, off your resume. They don't need to be there. You can choose what to disclose on your resume and what not to. And how do you decide? That's difficult. That's kind of a gut feeling situation for you as you apply to each job out there, as you apply to each stepping stone in your career. I recommend people apply on their resumes what jobs, what roles in education relate to the company they're applying to today. So if you're applying to something with technology and you worked with technology and a number of your jobs, seasonal or shorter term roles, I would put that down. They may notice and they may ask about the different time periods, some of which you were shorter periods of time in the job or the role. And that's where you're going to have to be able to explain or expand. You know, I was trying this out. The job description did not exactly match the job role that I had, if that's your case. And so I felt it was a little misleading. I did enjoy the role, but it wasn't exactly cut out for what I'm interested in my career. So I moved on to another role. Or, you know what? They were really short with employees, and so they had us working a lot of hours, and you could explain what happened. Try to be as factual as possible without down-talking or trashing a former job. Even if the job was negative or one of the hiring people there was toxic or the environment was toxic, try to avoid that. You can say things like, it wasn't a positive environment for me, and so I chose to move on so that I could find something more aligned with my capabilities, my skills, my personality. That's all you need to say. Resist the urge with regards to job hopping, especially if you've had one or more negative experiences. Resist the urge, I almost implore you, to trash talk the company or a specific person by first name, last name, title, position, whatever it is. There have been at least one case that I have worked with hiring companies where someone left company one, moved into company two was hiring, and it turns out that somebody that they were interviewing was a former candidate, or rather a former employee of job company one. That person, that interview candidate, talked negatively about the first company, and it just so happens one of the former managers was now at this new company. So now they're saying, wow, if we hire Craig, in this example, if things don't work out, he's going to trash talk us. He's going to think negatively of us. He put all the blame on the former company he worked for. It didn't sound like he took any ownership of the situation. So you really want to be careful when it comes to switching jobs on a more frequent basis. Be aware of the fact you're doing it and why, and then look at some self-perspective on that. And then finally, just be ready to address it, be ready to discuss it in the shortest amount of words, but with the most confidence and the most accuracy, and in the most positive way you can. I hope that was helpful differentiating between seasonal jobs, kind of like paid internships, and I expanded on that a bit, and then job hopping, kind of moving from role to role, regardless of time period or season. So be cautious, be aware of what you are doing in your career, especially earlier on in your entry-level days, and then be cautious, be aware, and be selective, I would say, in closing, of what you choose to put on your resume so that you signal the right message, the right reasons for applying to this new role, this new career path. I'm career coach Craig Ansell. You've been listening to Career Growth Made Easy. I hope today's episode 209, Seasonal Jobs versus Job Hopping, was helpful. We'll talk to you soon. God bless. You can always reach out and follow us on social media at Craig Ansell, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. And if you'd like something daily, a daily dose of inspirational information, it's Career Coach Craig on TikTok. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel. New episodes every Monday. In the meantime, why don't you follow us on social media at Craig Ansell on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To book a coaching appointment, download our free guides, or join our email list, check out the links in the description below.